Hello, 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 hello.
Hello.
Today,
Hi,
hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. I hope you guys have a good show. We are live Monday, July 11th. Guys, you know what? It's fish tour week.
It doesn't seem real.
It
This week?
doesn't. This
Mm-mm.
week?
No, that's not right.
Yeah, like
No.
not that
Oh,
many sleeps.
I'm going to
my
check my phone.
I'm going to check my watch. I think that this week is when Fish is going on tour. I don't know. You would think that we would know this information. If we're wrong on this, please, listeners, dear listeners out there, let us know.
I think it's
Um,
real.
I think it's real.
Yeah.
I think that I'm accurate on this. But this week, Fish will be taking the stage for the very first time
Since the last time.
since early June 2022. This weekend we'll have the 17th, 18th, and 19th Fish shows of 2022.
Mm.
It's so wild. We've heard so much Fish in the first half of this year. It's been pretty cool of the band to do this for us. Um, I'm really excited for what we have on tap this upcoming summer. I haven't been informed of any set lists or of any bust outs yet. I'm expecting to get my PDF in the mail of what to anticipate by at least Friday or Saturday morning. May
RJ
screw
hasn't
things up
forwarded
from a
that yet?
prediction standpoint. He doesn't forward me that stuff. He hoards it. That's a
Mm.
So
hint for
rude.
today's episode. He
Unfair.
hoards it. We're not here today, though, to talk about summer 2022 because we're going to be talking about summer 2022 a
hmm
ton in the next 8 weeks. We got our plans all set. We got a bunch of guests who are booked. We got new sponsors wrangled up. I may even have a new shirt at some point. I'm about to have a new background. I mean, we are in position to tackle, not violently, but lovingly, this upcoming summer tour. We've even got our friends over at Wook Plus. We're going to be recapping a bunch of shows alongside of them. We're going to be recapping shows immediately afterwards, sometimes hanging out with him. You get to see all of us a little bit looser, a little bit more limber.
You can see what I look like at 11:30 p.m.
I know. I'm nervous. I hope I can stay up that late. I can't believe I volunteered to do two of those. I thought they just let me pick one. They're like, "Great, you'll do those two," and I'm like, "11:30, okay."
You get a lot of
Hey,
energy,
everybody.
Meg. You're going to be
Yeah,
great. You're going
I'll
to be
try.
great. Also, shout out to our good friends over at Work Plus for putting together an amazing ad that featured our very own Megan Dance, the Megan Dance on
True.
it. That's what your name is for the entire summer.
Pretty great.
You're,
I can't wait
you're
for people
just
to see
the Megan Dance because that is a vibe that we all need to encapsulate and live with throughout this entire summer. But you put your acting skills to work.
hmm I did.
Mr. Kevin Hogan put his acting skills to work, and we showcase that, hey, there's no competition here. We're all just hanging out, talking fish, loving fish, probably fluffing way too much fish. Come at us, tell us what we fluffed too much. We'll argue with you. We're happy to do that. I'll come in the streets and I'll start fighting for the things I love. You know, that's where I am. Getting way off topic here on a Monday. I am very excited for this upcoming summer tour. I'm very excited to hang with you two a ton. We're also going to do like
hmm
pre-show shows, post-show shows, set break shows. There's a lot of shows that are
So
coming up.
fun.
It's going to be a ton. But before we get to all of that, we have to talk today for, I think, the fourth time this year about 1992 Fish, which was 30 years ago.
I haven't been here for any of those.
You
You're
haven't,
right. You
unfortunately.
haven't. 'Cause
Keep
they've
doing
been
it
on
on Wednesday.
Wednesdays. Yeah.
We'll keep doing it on Wednesday. We'll keep doing that. We'll just save the 1997 to 2004 content for when Jonathan can appear. We are joined today by a very special guest. Mr. Alex May will be joining us here in just a couple of minutes. Alex was, I want to say, lucky enough, but I don't even think that's the right word. I think he had the foresight in
Mhm.
1992 to go and see Fish on that summer tour in 3 different occasions. He got to see a Horde show, a solo Fish show, 2-setter, and a Santana show. He got to see it all. He got to see the full
Perfect.
plethora. Aside from going to Europe and seeing them with the Violent Femmes, which, to be totally honest, I can't hold against anyone for not traveling to Europe to see Fish in 1992. I just can't. I mean, I probably wouldn't have. Even
It's
though
a
I
noob call.
regret
I'm
it.
sorry.
Totally.
All real fans went on the
Everybody
Violent
was there.
Femmes tour.
That is the way to
Everybody.
judge a vet, actually. That's actually how we should do it. If someone's like criticizing you for loving Fish too much, you should be like, were you there in Europe 92? No? Then shut up. Just
Yeah.
move along, you know? I
Talk.
don't want to hear your opinion, given everything you have to this band. No, Alex saw a bunch of great, great shows in the summer of 92, and we're going to dive into those with him. But before we do that, we do have to tell you a bit about our sponsors. And I know you're out there saying, hey, I can just pause because Brian's going to go on about Sunset Lake CBD. No, he's not. Not right now, at least. I will,
Uh-huh.
but not in this moment. I want to tell you about our sponsors at Passion House Coffee. Here at Osiris, we are powered by a few things. Music, of course, everybody knows this. Also coffee. Meg, Jonathan, you guys strike me as people who need coffee. Do you?
I do. And I have been a regular Passion House customer for some time now. They're
Meg?
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a coffee person. Coffee's delicious. It's
We've,
the best.
we've
It's a
all
morning
got
ritual.
kids. I don't know how you'd survive kids without coffee. I tried it for like 3 weeks. I was like, I'm just going to give up coffee and I'm going to drink water. Why would I do that? Why would I suffer myself like that? You know?
Crazy. I'd like to point out that I didn't even say coffee's delicious. I just said yes. Delicious is important.
It's important.
It's not my first thought. But
And it's part
you
of the
get it
reason.
with these guys.
It's part of the reason why we're always drinking Passion House coffee. And now we have our very own blend, the Ocean of Osiris.
I mean,
How
that's cool. That's
It's
cool.
really cool. It's really
Pretty
cool. Please visit passionhousecoffee.com. You can see it on the screen right here, but I'll read it again for those of you listening. Passionhousecoffee.com to get some of this and other coffee today. Use the code OSIRIS, OSIRIS, for free shipping on every order. In addition, we have a contest that we will be running all summer long. For each Fish show, we'll be giving away bags of Ocean of Osiris coffee every time Fish plays an Ocean song. Every time you hear an Ocean song, may it be Soul Planet or possibly like A Wave of Hope or maybe even Gula Papyrus, tag Osiris on and use the hashtag Ocean of Osiris, and we'll select 2 winners at random each night. Should be a ton of fun. Check out passionhousecoffee.com and use promo code OSIRIS. Free shipping on every order. In addition, last bit of business here for you all. We want to tell you about our sponsors at Tonewood Brewing and the Ardmore Theater. On Monday, July 18th, Osiris Live is coming to the Ardmore. This event will be a combination of live music, conversation, and lots of jamming. We all like jamming. In this event, we'll focus on amazing guitarists. Musical guests include Tom Hamilton, Chris Forsyth, and Daniel Donato. Backing band features Andy Cush of Garcia Peoples. I think you're repping Garcia Peoples right now on the show.
Oh
Yes,
my
I am.
God.
Right there on my
Such a
shirt.
killer shirt. Such a killer shirt. Ryan Jewell, who's played with Chris Forsyth and Riley Walker and a number of other amazing artists, also taught me how to play guitar for like 8 weeks. It was the best music lessons I've ever
No
had in my entire
way.
life. And Ron Stabinsky of the Meat Puppets. Each musical guest will talk with our good friend RJB and then play a couple songs with the backing band. The night will conclude with a super jam featuring all of the musicians. Thanks to Tonewood Brewing and the Ardmore Music Hall for helping make this happen. For tickets, you can see it on the screen. Visit osirispod.com/Osiris Live. And with that,
Come, say hi. I'm going to be there.
come say hi. Megan will be there. I will be there in spirit. I am so excited about this. And with that, let's welcome our very good friend, Mr. Alex May. Alex,
Hello.
how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing really well, thank you. It's the middle of July, but we have a random reprieve, so it's only like 80 degrees and not 95 and sweltering. So it's all good. It's
That's
all
very
good.
good. We had like we were in the hundreds this past
Oof.
weekend, and then we got like wind that came in last night, and I came outside to let the dogs out at I don't know 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever insane hour my puppies wake up at, and I was like, oh, it's so nice out. I went inside and opened the entire house. It was perfect. What a gift.
Yeah.
So, Alex, we brought you on the show today. We've been talking. You and I have been emailing for I don't know the last 6 or 7 months, talking about this episode. I can't believe it's actually here. Tell us, take us back in time 30 years to
Okay.
1992. Tell us where you were at, how you got into fish, and kind of how you ended up going to like the 3 sampler pack of summer 92 fish shows.
Yeah. So I guess in 1990, 91, I was like a 15 or 16-year-old, and I got into the Beat Generation, the 60s counterculture movement, and just was reading like On the Road and Howl and Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test and Thomas Pynchon, and I fell in love with the Dead. And at first, the only way I knew to connect with music was through live recordings. So I was collecting all the studio albums, and then eventually got Reckoning, Dead Set, and Live Without a Net. And I was like, this is why people are excited about the Grateful Dead. So I immediately began collecting every tape I could. It didn't matter if it was a soundboard or a hissy 6th generation audience tape. I just had to have it. And I had like incomplete sets. I had Cornell set 2 in 91, but it wasn't really until the mid 2000s that I actually heard set 1. So I was just ravenous for whatever I could get my hands on. And at some point, some fish tapes started circulating in. I know I had 12/8, 86 set 2. I had a bunch of the Colorado 1990 run. Some of the local shows at tracks like Mrs. Pizza Shit Rocks. Those were all filtering in my way. And I was drawn to the Dead because of the lyricism, like the vocal imagery when you're listening to those songs, the deep interplay of the band, and then a ripping guitar player. And all my friends were super into punk rock, like Sonic Youth, the Pixies, the Pogues, Sonic Replacements, etc. And Fish kind of navigated in between those things. They had the songwriting, they had the lyricism, they had a band that was just tight. And I never would describe Fish as aggressive, but they were just like right there on that edge of really fast pace, like cutting edge music. And Trey was just fire back then. So I was just fell in love with that sound. And I saw my first musical show. I kind of consider that like the show that I wanted to see, not necessarily something my parents dragged me to, was 3/6/92 on the floor at Hampton with the Dead. And I was close enough to like see Jerry, and you were there?
I was there. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, so jealous.
So I was close enough to be seeing Jerry like in person, and it just blew my mind. Yeah. And then a couple nights later, I saw him at the Cap Center, and that was like a just whip change of like an intimate 10,000 person volume, and then going to the Cap Center and being up in the nosebleeds. It was just a startling contrast. But then I got word that Fish was playing in Charlottesville that summer, so I was able to go to Plan 9 and get tickets for like $12.50 each. And I bought 3 tickets, and I had another friend come over the mountain from Harrisonburg and join us at tracks. My dad was a big enough Santana fan for me to convince him into going with me so I could see Fish. And he was like, all right, Santana. But the Horde show and 7-Eleven, like that was just by luck. And I'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, I was really fortunate to get thrust into this world as a 17-year-old going to see this band that was just absolute fire at a point where I was loving live music and just really, really exposed to it. I'm excited to go to Raleigh this summer. That'll be my 88th show.
Nice.
And really like kind of life got in the middle of things. Most of my shows are all 1.0. I saw a handful of 3.0s. or 2.0s, excuse me. And then in the fall or winter of 2009, my wife and I were expecting twins, and they were due in mid-April. So like Fish was coming back at Hampton in March. I was like, I got this. And I was able to get tickets to 1 and 3, and I was just going to go to night 2. I was going to manifest it. It was going to happen. It was going to be beautiful. But then on February 28th, my wife's water broke in spectacular fashion all over our kitchen floor. And I was like, all right, we're going to the hospital. So our twin daughters were born the next day. And I was
Aw.
like,
Oh man.
Hampton's off.
yeah,
Hands
it's
were
like
full. 1 week. 1 week out.
1 week,
1
yeah.
week. Man.
Oh.
Oh man.
We were so unprepared. We had car seats, but they weren't installed. It's like, we got 6 weeks. It's like, no, life is like, we're going to do this to you. So I couldn't go.
It's a pretty
but
good excuse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll give it to you.
But that's kind of been my thing with this, kind of since 2009, is I'm just hitting like Charlotte, Raleigh, anywhere that's close by that I can dip up to, kind of either come back that night or just do a quick overnight. So things have slowed down for me, but that's where I'm at. So
It's a pretty likely tale, though, of people who got to see a bunch of 90s shows and then life gets in the way, and, in the right way. And the nice thing about Megan, you're right there. I'm in the middle of it right now where it's like, I could go to all these shows, but I do have 2 kids and they're all very young.
Yep.
And like with Couch Tour now, it's almost, why don't I just hang out with my kids and watch Fish? And there's like a great way to combine them all. So I definitely feel you on that. We brought our son to Trey at Red Rocks this last year. I'm not ready for him to see Fish. It's a little bit too dark. Trey is all happy, and but it was a good stepping stone into there. But I'm just realizing as we're talking, and I really appreciate you breaking all that down. So it was 30 years ago to the day that you saw Fish at
Wow.
the Horde Festival at Jones Beach. Was that your first Fish show? Correct me, forgive me if I
absolutely.
That was it. Go ahead.
Well, I got super lucky. At that point, my aunt and uncle lived in Pennington, New Jersey. Okay. And my mom's mom was like, she and my sister drove up there to go visit them. And once we were there, I realized how close Homedale was. And so I got in a big argument with my mom. She gave me a bunch of guilt about like, how could you leave the family? How could you I was like,
oh God,
it's
get
Fish.
ready for this.
And she set up, she was fair. She let me go, but I had a pretty, tough curfew. So I didn't stay for the entire show, but I got to go see Fish, which was freaking amazing. So that really was great. And then I had tickets to go see the 15th, and that really blew my mind. You hear about folks like they go to a show or two and they don't get it. That second show, I was all in. You're in. Yeah.
Well, let's set the table here really quick, because we did a monthly series throughout the spring, March, April, and May, where we talked through those months of Fish's spring tour, which, as we talked about, it was a real growth period for the band. They bookend the tour with multiple weeks in the Northeast. They're debuting a ton of new songs, and as they move out west, they start to really stretch their wings in a lot of cases, and they start to push songs like David Bowie and Tweezer out a little bit further. You have these incredible shows like 416 and 421 that really just scratches the surface, but like those are the 2 that just stand out in so many cases as huge accomplishments for the band at that point in time. And then they come back to the Northeast. They close down in mid-May with a couple nights in both Portland, I believe, and the Flynn Theater, and upstate New York. But I'm curious, like, for all of you guys, that kind of gap between what Fish did during the spring versus this incredible summer tour that is going to showcase like a lot of opportunities for them to kind of market themselves to a bigger audience. What are your guys' thoughts on Fish as they're going from spring 92 to summer 92? Jonathan, I'm curious your thoughts.
It's kind of, they're creeping onto the big stage, right? So they've been playing the moderate sized clubs in towns and small theaters and such. And that's kind of what they still do for their own shows, like Tracks, for example, here. But opening for Santana, they're playing the big sheds. Horde, particularly up north, they're playing the big sheds. They're getting out to much bigger space. And so they're having to do that thing that we've talked about a bunch, which is figure out what material works in the
Yeah.
bigger spaces. And, they take some chances. I, I wouldn't say that any of it doesn't work, but that's me. But I think they probably find some stuff that, you know, doesn't play as well, and they don't. So you don't see Take the A Train too much on the big stages, but they'll still play it, still in the repertoire. But then they find they can really go big with a Chalk Dust Torture or a You Enjoy Myself and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, and I really like that they don't shy away from taking chances when they're on those big stages, which a lot of bands might. Fish just continues to barrel forward unafraid.
That's a really good point, and that's something I was noticing when I was listening. I think we'll all highlight that, but I do appreciate you twisting the knife a little bit further to RJ with Take the A Train not working on big stages. Megan,
I did
what are
have
your
him in mind.
what are your thoughts? You and I think, did all 3 Spring '92 shows together. What are your thoughts, and just in terms of how you're hearing the band change from the end of that tour to wherever they're going next?
Yeah, I think in March, they're really thinking about their connection with the audience. And then in April, they really kind of turn inward and start thinking about their connection with each other on stage in a way that's just really powerful and motivating and inspiring for them. And then, like you were saying, Jonathan, this is like their dress rehearsal, right? And I think you can see them really practicing stamina and what it's going to take to play at these really big rooms. And it's a chance for them to see, like, what does it sound like to play Yem in an amphitheater? What does it sound like to get on the trampolines in the amphitheater? And what does it sound like to play, these quieter songs in the amphitheater? So I think for them, it's an incredible dress rehearsal because the next 2 years are just packed with growth. So it's an exciting time. And like you said, Jonathan, they're playing without a net in '92, and it pays off majorly. It's a really exciting year to listen back to. The energy is just through the roof.
Yeah, this year to me sounds like such pure Fish, but it was wild. Like I will admit, Summer '92 had always kind of been a bit of a blind spot for me because it's not
Yeah.
a straightforward tour, and I was like, where do I go? I know the
Mhm.
Santana set in Stowe. Got to go and listen to that. But like for me, it was wild to go and listen to bounce around these shows, and if we didn't make it clear to listeners at the top, one of the joys of having Alex on is that you saw a Horde show, a solo show, and a Santana show. We're going to kind of use that format to jump off because we all picked a show that matches up with something that you saw to kind of complement your experience. So let's talk. So you saw your first Fish show was 7/11/92, the Garden State Arts Center today, 30 years ago. Tell us really quick, because I picked a Horde show as well, and we can talk about this, but like, tell me the vibe of the Horde shows. Like, what was it like walking in there? How many, there's a bunch of different fan bases who are all kind of connected, I'm imagining, together, but like, are also now doing their own thing 30 years later. But what was it like inside? What was the turnover like for these artists? Like, what was the vibe and structure of it all?
I'm curious if you could interject also your familiarity with some of these other groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was woefully like my linchpin's not the right word, but I was unprepared for that level of things. I was looking back at when like the Spin Doctors record came out, when 4 came out by Blues Traveler. And it looks like a lot of those things dropped in either later '92 or didn't really achieve mass popularity until spring of '93. So for the most part, I was unprepared. I had a girl who was a friend, not a girlfriend, who made me a mixtape. And I had a couple Panic tunes on there. There was also some Little Feat, some Allman Brothers. So it was that kind of vibe. So I knew a couple of songs by them. And I went and got the new ARU record after hearing this, but I was not prepared. I knew Fish basically, and that was, I think, I think that was the impetus really behind the whole Horde tour, was like, hey, each of these bands have like 800, 1,000 fans who would go see a show. But if you put 4 or 5 of them together, then all of a sudden you can half fill a shed.
Yeah.
And so I really think that was the fan. And so like I said, I was at my aunt's house. I begged and pleaded. I was able to go over there. I don't remember the layout of who was who. I feel like Fish was 3rd or 4th. I basically left after the Fish set so I could get home by my curfew. But really, it was amazing to kind of hear all those bands. And I'm looking back at all the set lists, and I'm like, oh yeah, there are all these songs that I now know, but I didn't necessarily know then. So I was woefully unprepared. That being said, I had a lot of fun at the show. Like it really felt like they were taking so many chances. And that's kind of your point. Like, it wasn't a festival set per se, but they really just were playing their music and doing it their own way. And so really like something like Landlady to open it up. I'm a huge Punch You in the Eye fan, so it was really cool to hear. That was before Punch and Landlady were together. So just upon my re-listening, getting to hear Landlady was like, oh, I love this song. It's so good by itself. The Yem really stands out just because it was a lot of fun with John Popper, who came out on stage. They were all kind of like he got out and he was doing the trampoline jump. And I've read different reports on this where he broke the trampoline, or the trampoline was broken and he exited the stage afterwards. But either way, it was fun to see someone like get back on stage and be with the band and be a part of that kind of shenanigans. So it was a crash course into things. I was unprepared for, I wish maybe a year had gone by and I was more aware what Horde Tour meant, getting those kinds of bands together. But yeah, I mean, I got to see Fish, so it was cool.
One thing that really shocks me about listening to these sets, these one-setters, is it's different from current festival sets because it's so focused on, like, it is the classics. When you really like to get Coil, You Enjoy Myself, Cavern, Runaway Jim, Stash, Susie Greenberg, all in a set. Like, that is as close to like a Fish greatest hits as people are asking for it, that, at that point in time, and really even to this day. But it's also wild to me that like these don't just feel like a first set. And if you look back at like the spring tour, they were playing these sets that like were kind of recital sets, in the sense that like they showcased everything about the band, so you'd have like a segment that was hard rocking, then you'd have a segment that was more bluegrass, you'd have a segment that had jazz songs because they're playing in tiny theaters and they can still play jazz songs. There you go, Jonathan. You'd have a segment that was a little bit experimental. They're not quite 1993 yet, but like these sets are all of that compacted in like 6 songs. And perhaps that's a good transition. Like the show I picked was 2 nights earlier, the tour opener, the Horde. I think it's the Horde tour opener. At least it's when Fish jumps on board. It's also Fish's first performance at the Cumberland County Civic Center, which really hit me because it's 18 months before they play 12/30/93, which to me that is a top 5 Fish show to me. And in 18 months, this band is going to go from playing 3rd or 4th on a festival bill with a bunch of other bands that they're on the same level at, to headlining a 2-set show at this venue and playing one of my favorite Mike songs that they're ever going to play. But even here, you get what you're talking about. You get a Glide opener, which is also going to close the show. It's a Glide reprise to close the show.
Let's do that again. That's so awesome.
I love that.
That would be so cool.
Susie, Stash, Squirming Coil, Runaway Jim, David Bowie, all in this set, along with other songs. You get a vacuum solo in the middle of David Bowie.
That's so weird.
It's just like this band is trying things out and basically saying, whatever we did on this last tour, this is my interpretation, whatever we did on this last tour worked. Let's not tone that back because people clearly like that. Let's just lean into that, even when we're playing with other bands and we're playing like a 1-set show.
I think the difference here from the standalone shows, or the thing that's similar to the standalone shows but different from the Santana shows, is that these shows are really, even though it's a mixture of audiences, Fish felt like they were in front of their crowd, and so they're playing to that. They also have a little bit more time than some of the Santana sets, which is good and nice,
Yeah.
and I think well programmed by the by the folks who collectively put this together. And yeah, both of these 7-9 and the 7-11 sets are really great. Just like classic 92 version of Stash,
Ooh,
the
Stash is
7-9
so
one
good.
is
9 minutes of just like
particularly
there's
hot,
not
but-
a moment that it breaks.
Perfect.
Right.
It's perfect. It's like gusto, precision. It's like perfect.
And you
Well-
can interchange a lot of the different versions through like the say 6 shows that I listened to get ready for this. But they're all really good. Some of them are really, really good, maybe, but they're all really good and very easy to swap out, because that's the other thing they're doing very well at this point, is they're just consistent, very high level playing. There's no slouching through these sets.
Yeah. I wonder what like the after show hangs were like, since all these guys were sort of friends and sort of on the same like tour circuits. Like they must have just had a blast after the shows were over on the bus, like different members of different bands getting together, hanging out and having fun. I just wonder what it was like.
Well, it's a
Bet it
weird
was
time.
really fun.
Yeah, it's an interesting time for all of them because, like you mentioned, like it's not like any of these bands have blown up, but they're all at a point where they collectively can draw enough to fill an arena, or 60 to 70% of an arena of an amphitheater, like enough to justify the expense of it. So like they're all kind of relatively unknown, but they're well known enough by their fan bases, so they're kind of at that point in your career where like this is what you're doing, and that you can do this and you're all in. But the pressures of any sort of fame, Blues Traveler doesn't have to deal with Runaround yet. Spin Doctors, I don't think at this point had to deal with any of their big singles. Those are still about a year or two away.
I think they were starting to hit, and I saw them that fall at college.
Yeah, I think
That sounds
like
about
Two
right.
Princes came out in like 92, but they're like on the precipice. Some of these,
Yeah.
The record was out,
They're
but
like-
it hadn't quite. And it was, I think, during this time was coming big. And I think the press for this tour, there's I think a Rolling Stone cover or a Rolling Stone piece that talked
feature
about
about
this
it.
tour that I think didn't hurt anybody at all.
I remember hearing about it. I was still in middle school, but I remember hearing about this and like thinking it was really cool. I didn't know about any of the bands yet, but I remember hearing about Horror Tour.
That's one of the. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
No. Go ahead. Share your story.
I was going to say that's one of the things that I found really interesting looking at the history of the Horde Tour is like the first year they were broke. The second year they broke even. But by 94 through 98, they were making money.
It was a hand over fist affair.
Yeah. But if you look at the bands that were on those later bills, they all had really big either commercial radio success or video success. Also, arguably, where are those bands now? Like that, it is what it is. But
And that's probably more when I heard about it was like 94, like when I was in high school, and
I mean, that is the thing. Your last point is like one of the things that really fascinates me about this vibe of these multiple bands playing together is Blues Traveler and Spin Doctors are going to have to deal with the challenges of breaking out of this fan base and breaking out of this culture and becoming a part of pop culture. Fish is going to have this career that's going to kind of like steadily rise in a way that they're all on the same level right now. In 3 years, these bands are going to have like the challenge of following up big hit singles, and Fish isn't going to have to worry about that. It's a very interesting like crossroads that they're all at, and what the next 3 to 4 years is going to have for them. Let's jump to your second show, which gets us into, so this tour, which lasts from July 9th all the way to August 30th. which is kind of a standard summer tour now. You
Yeah.
know, that's what we're looking at in this upcoming 2022 summer tour. But this show, so I'm just blown away. We talked about this, but like as I'm looking at it, it's just like hitting me all over again. You see 3 vastly different Fish shows in 3 weeks, or in a week's
Almost a
time
week.
frame.
Yeah.
Almost a week.
Wow.
So
You're
you go
killing it.
from Homedale in 7-Eleven, where you ditch your family, still making it home for curfew, and you get back home and you see Charlottesville, you see Fish play at Tracks on 7/15. Tell us about this vibe, all this sort of stuff. Like, what made you go to this? Was it just you walked out of the 7-Eleven show and you're like, done, I got to do this again?
Well, no. I actually knew Fish was playing. The 7-Eleven show, I was just lucky to be able to go into. I knew they were playing Tracks, so I had planned and asked permission to, go do this concert. I had an older chaperone who was willing to drive us. I was 17. I probably looked like I was 15. So I was like, I was not sneaking beers. I was not doing anything like that. And Tracks was tiny. I think I mentioned to y'all, I was able to see Dave Matthews play there a couple times. But you like walk in the venue. The soundboard is right there. The merch table is right behind the soundboard. Then you're in like a really short room that goes right up to the stage. It's smaller than the 930 Club. It's smaller than the Black Cat if you've been to, or the Cat's Cradle if you've been down in Chapel Hill. And
that's a small place too. Cat's Cradle is small, so this place must be really small.
it was tiny. I think about 700 people fit in there.
Wow.
And the stage was like knee height, and the band was probably an arm width apart from everybody. I bought a Fish Eurotracks 2000 t-shirt from the merch table, which I wore until it had holes in it everywhere. And then it was like, I had to let go. But my friends and I were literally the first row. Like I could reach my hand out and touch Trey. And that was one of the things that just really blew me away, was just like the presentation of the band. Like Paige was kind of wearing a button up and some jeans, and Trey was a t-shirt and jeans. But Mike had on like acid wash jeans and his puffy high top sneakers.
He's so committed to those. He wears them for like a few years. Yeah.
And Fishman came out in a jock strap and rec specs, and that was it.
What? Did he wear that throughout the whole show?
Yes, he did.
Oh my God. It's a commitment to come back from set break. Yep. Still doing it.
Virginia in the summertime.
Yeah, by the way,
it was probably warm.
Packed on top of each other, so I can't imagine who had to clean off that seat cover for the drummer. But
thank you for that.
Image. This is it. It's the visual imagery.
But yeah. So it was kind of a really tiny stage. There was a second smaller room. They did have a bar and pool tables. But my friends and I we rolled right up front. We were the first row. 17. We were just pogo jumping the entire set, and it was really a great mix of like songs I knew, songs I was hoping to hear, and songs that I had no idea about. So I loved the Glide opener. We had just gotten Picture of Nectar, so that was really cool to hear. Just kind of the descending tritones of like falling into this vibe. And then the Okipa Susie was like such a classic that you were just like, we're on fire, we're going for it. So it was so much fun.
It's wild how like I'm looking at this and it's very, very similar to what you would expect like a set during the spring, in terms of like you get a bit of everything. Mm-hmm. You get that energy out the gates, Susie, then Foam, then you get this, my friend, which is kind of like your opener in the 5th slot, but it, gives you kind of that classical appeal. It showcases the Americana aspect. Uncle Pen, you get into some bluegrass, and then you're right back into Insanity with Split Open and Melt. You get Horse, Silent, Chalk Dust, Lizards, Antelope. I mean, it's a very cool first set that flows really well in a way that I often wonder what it would be like if they played a 92 style set where like, they didn't play anything post 92, today. Maybe like expand a little bit on some of these songs, but like just getting this many classics in one set. somebody would complain,
Yeah.
obviously, but like
Oh, for
They
sure.
should not, though.
at some point you would hear
Yeah.
this and be like, oh my God, like they're not playing anything post 1990. You know, it's such a classic Fish sound. All of these songs, they all work together, even though, you know, there's a lot of diversity in the music.
Well, that was one thing in striking me in doing my homework is I actually listened to the Boathouse show and the Flood Zone show, and they had enough standalone jams that each night had like a song or two featured that weren't repeated. Whereas you might get like a Guila Papyrus repeat, or there were some other songs that were repeated, but they had enough like, no, we're going to save Mike's song for this day, or we're going to save Divided Sky for this day. That they already had that kind of intentionality, even though all those venues are like 45 minutes an hour away from each other. So
It's so wild.
I remember the Boathouse.
yeah.
All right.
Well, so
Megan, let's. Well, go ahead.
there's a new boathouse, but it's not the same as the
It's
old
not the
boathouse.
same boathouse.
The old
Yeah.
boathouse literally was a crappy, like dilapidated boathouse on the water in Norfolk. That was
Yeah, I
just-
saw this, that's where I saw
Oh,
the
wow.
Spin Doctors that fall, and
Oh, cool.
Panic maybe a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool spot.
Megan, let's turn to you because you selected a show that Fish played that was another solo show about a month later across the country in
nice.
San Juan Capistrano, California at the Coach House. Tell
Yeah.
us why you picked this and what your thoughts were as you were listening to this and kind of how you interpreted this along with the larger tour.
Well, this is a dinner theater in Orange County, California,
Wow.
which is just hilarious. Yeah, it was opened in 1980 and it's still open, and it's a launching platform for aspiring artists. So there's 480 people seats, but 300 are reserved for dinner reservations, and they're close to the stage. So that to me was just hilarious, imagining Fish playing in a dinner theater. And one of the
Especially if
reviews I
Fish
read,
comes out wearing a jockstrap.
Totally.
Surprised they didn't do dinner in a
You are-
movie.
I know, that would have been all. We are about to ruin your appetite. I read one review on fish.net that they were saying that they like folded up their table and chairs and like pushed them under the stage so they could like dance and stuff. But I just think this would have been just a hilarious scene. And this show is awesome. I mean, it's super playful. It just has this fun energy. The Ninja Custodians are there, which is their like friend band from Vermont, and they open for them. And it's just awesome. They're now in California playing. And so I can imagine that it just must have been a really fun night for them, this like reunion with their friends from Vermont. And here they are playing in California at this dinner theater. And
So far away from home.
yeah, like so far from home. And like, you know, they've been out west. They did like this amazing tour out in April where they just absolutely crushed California. So I'm sure they're really feeling great about being back in California already. And the show's just really fun. It's the highlights. I think the Wilson is incredible. It just has this like really slow intro with these like wood blocks. There's a lot of secret language instructions, really cool guitar licks. And like they start it with a whispering Wilson. Like I love these old Wilsons that have such a different beginning. You know, now it's just this powerhouse beginning, but I love this kind of creep into it. It's just super playful and really quiet and creepy after Can You Still Have Fun? And Trey like just is repeating this riff and it gets like louder and then quieter. And they're just, to me, this whole show seems really loose, but in the best way. Not like I saw some people saying they didn't think it was like the tightest show, but I think it actually works in this show. I think that they sound really like they're having a great time, and they're doing a lot of secret language. They're doing incredible Bowie. I mean, this Bowie is like, this intro is super cool. It's very unhurried. They're doing some weird, I can't tell if it's like a slide effect on a guitar or something. I don't know what they're using, but it sounds just really interesting. Paige is killing it. Really layered, really good, incredible peaks. This Bowie is just, it's incredible. The tweezer has like a Tweeprise jam. It just kind of keeps building like a Tweeprise would. There's some really great jamming in this show. I think the Terrapin is really weird. You know, Ninja Mike comes on from Ninja Custodian, is like playing on the drums while Fishman's playing on the guitar. And then he starts doing this like disgusting, gross vocal jam during the vacuum solo. Like The whole thing is just really disgusting. Like, I can't even imagine people are really eating dinner during this. It's like very weird. It's way too long. It's just like, I love how they're just going for it, you know? But then what's so weird and
You've
amazing
stuck
about
around
fish?
for set 2. You might now
Exactly.
we've got you.
Now
It's
we're
not their
really gonna
fault. The
get weird.
dessert was delayed.
Exactly. But then they do this like absolutely sublime version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow that's just beautiful. And I just love imagining them playing this in this club at like 10:30 p.m., you know, and it's gorgeous. And then it creeps into this spooky, like dystopian riff where in Cavern where they're like playing the Somewhere Over the Rainbow, like quoting it over the beginning of Cavern. It's so good. I did think this show, I had never listened to the show before, and it's incredible.
It kind of makes me think like this is around the time when they're starting to figure out, and you could hear hints of this throughout the spring, but this is around the time where they're starting to figure out like if we take one musical idea and mash it up with another one that don't necessarily work, like we actually create something that's really intriguing and we learn
Yeah.
something and our audience gets creeped out but learns something as well. And I was listening to that this morning thinking just like this sounds like 1993 Fish just 12 months early. And I wonder in a
Yeah.
sense are the amphitheaters having something to do with this? Is it a confidence level that like, hey, look who we're playing with? Like we can hang. So whatever we're doing is getting us to this point. So let's just keep trusting ourselves. I don't know.
I mean, this show is directly after 3 nights opening for Santana at the Greek. Now, of course,
Yeah.
they'd also done a bunch
Mm.
of other nights opening for Carlos Santana, but they just did 3 at the LA Greek. And then without any real travel, they've got this show with some old friends. I feel like they're probably on a pretty high, creatively, musically, ego, everything about it. They're probably feeling pretty good, and it comes through. You mentioned the Bowie. That Bowie is absolutely like if you listen to nothing else, you'd be making a mistake, but you should listen to this Bowie.
Alex, what are your thoughts on these the single like the 2 set shows that kind of happen throughout this tour and what are your thoughts in terms of the band's development?
Well, so that's kind of, I think, the curiosity behind the summer tours. They start off opening in Europe, then they're on the Horde tour with their buddies, then they do some standalone shows, and then they're an opening act. So I feel like they're going through a growth spurt. Like my son right now, he's 11, and he needs a new pair of shoes like every 4 months.
Oh God.
They don't
and-
stop
and I-
doing that.
No, they don't. But I feel like Fish is also arguably at this point in their career where they're trying to figure out like how do we grow, and let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. And I feel like they're really learning through what either doesn't work or doesn't feel comfortable to find out like, hey, we need to do this on our own
Yeah.
and on our own
Mm.
terms. And that's kind of my big takeaway is just like they do all these different things, but they're just like, hey, wait a minute, like we need to just be ourselves, play our own shows, stop having opening acts and just focus on what we do really well. But
I like that. Yeah, it's such a learning experience and it's such a growth spurt that they're going through where like certain things work, certain things don't, and like they're kind of figuring that out
Yep.
on the fly. Before we jump into our final segment here to talk through these Santana shows, we do need to tell all of you listeners out there about a very, 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 did I say very enough? Good
Very.
friends, very, at Sunset Lake CBD. Megan, do you want to tell the listeners about Sunset Lake?
Absolutely. Everyone knows how much we love Sunset Lake. Sunset Lake CBD's line of smokable hemp products, they're for the old deadhead or the young fish fan or the fish fan that was young in 1992, seeing fish on Horde Tour, and is now just searching for a mellow body high. Smoking CBD has all the benefits of high THC cannabis without the paranoid and anxious side effects. They have 9 different strains from this year's harvest, and there's something for everyone. The Hawaiian Haze is awesome for an outdoor show, and Cherry Abacus is best for the end of the night. All the flower is grown, cured, and trimmed by Sunset Lake CBD farmers. They have an incredible farm-to-table approach, so you're going to get really great pricing, and they ship really fast, so you're not going to be waiting for a long time for your CBD. And I have really, really been enjoying their new CBD sleep gummies. So they have melatonin in them, and they're specifically designed to help you fall asleep and stay asleep and get a really great night's sleep. So if you're going to be out late partying on summer tour like me this summer, you're going to need lots of CBD gummies to help you go to sleep at night. So check them out. SunsetLakeCBD.com. Use the coupon code HFPod, and you're going to get 20% off everything. That's Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown.
And with that, we are more relaxed. We are ready to dive into the final segment of the Summer 92 tour, which, could I say it's going to be a hot one? Can I say that? Am I allowed to say
sure
that on
can,
this
Brian.
podcast?
Yeah,
You sure
It's
can.
warm.
It's going to be a smooth set of fish, if you will.
Oh,
Fish. So, yeah, you just got it.
Yeah.
no.
I apologize
No.
to everyone out there. Alex, I think everyone here on this show can agree. We've all had those like weeks in our lives where we're like, can this just be every week of my life?
Yeah.
Can I just
For
like
real.
see one good show and then another good show? And I'm going to see another good show. You get, as we noted, 3 fish shows in 1 week in mid-July. Horde, solo fish, and then you convince your dad to go see fish at Meriwether Post. Open up for Santana. Tell us, I guess, like, let's put a bow on this overall week that you had. What is it like seeing fish now in your 3rd setting, and how is the show for you overall?
So this show was oddly weird. The kind of seeing the Horde show was a lot of fun. It was unexpected. Tracks just blew my mind. I got to see a sloth. I got to hear a magrup. I think one of the things that was really unique about fish in this time frame is how inclusive they were. So we had all the signals, and we got an all fall down. We got a Simpson signal. Like, we just had so much fun. And then transitioning to Santana was a little abrupt. Upon re-listen, the show is better than I thought it was, but at the time it felt a little flat. I kind of think after the intimacy of seeing them in person, like almost able to touch them, and then kind of being out in the crowd, and most of the crowd was there for Santana. So I was able to convince my dad to go. So there was a smaller group there that was excited to see fish, but it was a different vibe. And at the time, and for most of the time, it was just kind of like, okay, not a bad show. And I still got to see it. So I'm always excited about that. But it didn't really resonate with me as much as, the previous 2 shows had.
I'll tell you, the fish.net they have the review from Dave Steinberg Zizix,
Yep.
which is in the Fish Companion, and he,
Yeah.
I think, largely agrees with you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now there's some disagreement in here, whereas people are not as disappointed, if you will,
Yeah.
as I think he definitely was. And you didn't use the word disappointment, so I'm not going to put that in your mouth. But I get that impression that it didn't live up to those other shows.
Correct.
We don't seem to have a tape. I don't have a tape, so I couldn't listen to it. But
This is the first time they're ever playing in a big amphitheater besides on Horde, right? They're opening for
Right.
Santana.
This is-
This is the first Santana.
It's the first
Yes.
Santana.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think they're really straying from. They're not really doing anything that crazy on this one. But I
The
think they
set
get
list
around to
looks a little bit more straightforward than some of these Horde set lists.
Yeah.
And I've got to imagine there's an element of pressure that the band feels that they're
Yeah.
not feeling on Horde, that they're not feeling when they're playing solo shows, that they probably didn't even feel opening up for the Violent Femmes in Europe. Like this, for all intents and purposes, like this might be the biggest gig of their career to this point in time. Like if they
Mhm.
come out and they, hook this crowd, no pun intended, right out the gates, like suddenly they've elevated themselves in these, first set opening shows, we've all been to concerts where you're like, I don't know who the opener is. And you kind of just like hang out, you give them, the time, you listen to them, you give them a cursory listen, but like you're there to see a different band.
Yeah.
And as many similarities as there are between Fish and Santana from the hose standpoint, from a soloing standpoint, there's definitely a lot of differences in terms of the overall fan base and the overall style that like you probably had a lot of people who were like, okay, I'm just looking through it right now. Like there's nothing really weird in the set list. There's no vacuum solos. There's no
there wasn't.
HYHU. There's no like it's about as straightforward of like a hey, can you handle this band as possible? And I'm guessing that's what you're feeling when you're in the room, Alex, especially compared to the last couple nights.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And then looking at a lot of these different sets, there's a lot of overlap. Like they're playing a lot of like 3 5-minute songs. There's usually 1 8-minute song. Maybe they're tossing in a yam. So they're still being themselves. But it's just like, how do we compact that Fish energy into like a 30-minute set? And that's a tall ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by later in the tour, they're doing it without. Again, you're right. They're not doing. You start to see signals, Simpson signals, all fall down. I think they're looking for their people, or they see their people, and they're trying to acknowledge them. Somebody commented on the Merriweather show, that. They didn't think it was that bad. It was a response to other reviews, but they especially enjoyed being able to get down front for Fish. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. But they do. I mean, right in the middle of this run, they also stop in for a very special show that deserves its own episode, perhaps, where they perform on Hangin' with MTV. So Fish is at a very weird moment for Fish, and I feel like that they were finding their way here.
Yeah.
What does it mean? I mean, at the Stowe show, which maybe I should have picked Carlos Santana and Carl Perazzo come out and play with them, which was probably very well received by even the non-Fish fans. But it's Stowe, so they're in Vermont, so they're probably a bit of a homer audience too for Fish. The show that I picked was the last of those Greek shows that I mentioned earlier, and it's 8:13. They only play 3 songs. They're a little bit cut short. They're literally playing in 30 minutes, but they do Chalk Dust, Foam, and You Enjoy Myself, and they do a full vocal jam. They don't really pull any punches on that. I don't know what the California audience was thinking of it. But it doesn't
that set's
sound
a little more successful to me than this set. Yeah.
It sounds like 30 minutes of Fish.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound like 30 minutes of like pop music Fish.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And maybe that's kind of where they got to, is like we just have to be ourselves in a condensed version. Maybe in the beginning they're trying to be more like, hey, let's play Sparkle, let's play Bouncing, let's play these songs that could actually go on the radio, I don't know.
No, I agree with that. I think that speaks to like what Jonathan was saying as well. And I think that speaks to the vibe that you're talking about, Alex. Like, I think it's got to be a challenging environment for the band. And if you think about like both sides of 1992, like 1990, they play 8 shows in June, 1 show in July, 1 show in August. 1991, they do a Horn summer tour. Like the idea of a summer tour, when Fish is touring and playing music, they are not missing summer tours. That is just like a staple. They'll take a fall tour off. They don't really tour in the spring anymore, but like summer is when this band is on. And you go to 1992, and again, there's some like up and down nature of like, there's no real consistency. They're playing Horde, they're playing with Santana, they're playing a few solo shows here and there. But then they're also playing these venues, MPP, Homedale, the Greek, that they're going to play going forward. And you look ahead to 1993, it's so wild that it took them 1 summer of opening for Santana to then say, okay, we can play that venue. And a year from now, in 1993, like I want to pull this up and compare both of these. They're going to play the Mann Music Center, Stowe by themselves, Jones Beach, Great Woods, Waterloo. They're going to play the New World Music Theater, Red Rocks, and then a bunch of theaters out west. Like they're going to play venues that when they start doing summer tours, like in 94, 95, 97, 98, like these are going to become the mainstay spots that they're going to go to. And it makes a lot of sense to me that when they play in front of Santana in Meriwether Post Pavilion for the first time, they're kind of like, how do we do this? Like, how do we actually present ourselves?
I mean, being an opening band is so hard. It's like being a substitute teacher. It's just really hard, to walk in and like try to get respect and have people listen to you. And it's a hard job.
It is. I want to ask you guys a couple of questions, unless anyone has anything else they want to say about sitting in with Santana.
I would like to mention. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, yeah, then I'll let you put the button on this. Is that, they did, I just flipped through all of these set lists while we were talking about this, and they did open up a little with a, stash here and a few, like teasing Oye Como Va at the Shoreline show, and doing some of that. I think the most notable is that they then, like Cal Expo, the final show of the tour, they open with Uncle Pen. They do an a cappella song. They do Memories, Antelope, and then a Sweet Adeline. I think that is like Fish at its most comfortable with this, even though they still don't really open up. Good Antelope, I think, in that one. But that was a 4-band bill show, so that's kind of wild. They had that much time because Los Lobos and the Indigo Girls were also on that show.
Yep.
So, wild. Sorry, Alex. What were you going to say?
Well, no, I have to give 725 a shout out, mostly just because my sister was there.
Wow.
Like I mentioned, we lived in Vermont from 83 to 89, which for me was the equivalent of 3rd grade to 8th grade. So my sister is 2 or 3 years younger than me. But she continued to go back to Vermont after we moved, and her parents had started a microbrewery called Catamount, and her parents were vendors at the Stowe Arts Expo. So my 14-year-old sister flew back to Vermont, went to Stowe, was drinking microbrews, running around the mountains of Stowe, seeing Fish and Santana as her first experience. And I'm just like, that's how you do it.
Wow, nailed it.
That's
good for her.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
don't tell my 14-year-old.
Yeah,
there's
mine either.
There's that great picture in the Fish book of Trey and Santana during that set, and you can kind of just see Santana be like, you've got it, and Trey's just like learning from him. He looks so young. I mean, he must have been like late 20s at that point in time. Incredible. I'm curious for you guys, just a couple of big picture takeaways from this tour. What do you guys think is kind of the larger significance of the band playing these future venues for the first time, even when it's a challenging situation?
Well, it's so good to get out on that big stage, especially before you're the one filling the room, just to get out on that stage and see what it feels like and
see how you sound up there.
Yeah. See how you sound, see what works, what doesn't, see what pieces of your equipment you like, don't like up there, feel how things play, look out. There's just something about looking out and being on the stage. I think it's a really big deal. They're lucky they got to do that. I think it helped a lot for them.
Yeah.
I agree completely with that. I think I alluded to it at the top of the thing. And I think, if anything, I would be curious to know if they made any adjustments during the tour.
Oh, yeah.
Like, did Trey decide he needed something else, or Paige or anybody, decide they need to change up a piece of gear or change the way they're, addressing their rig and in order to make it fit into the space. And maybe they had it dialed in and they were just like, no, just, put the mic right there and we're good. Maybe it was fine. And it was all about the material and the intentionality of the way they played. Maybe that's all they had to adjust. But I think it was just, again, amazing opportunity for them. And I feel like even if the reviews aren't the strongest of those shows among the fans, I feel like I think it worked. They took advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, that's really one of the things I had reached out to Brian about. Like, what is the mindset of a band being on this stage with the Horde tour and hopefully a half full venue, and then with Santana a month
Mm-hmm.
later and being at full capacity? And like, how does that empower you as a band? How does that inspire you to like, how do we do this? How do we get to this level where we're the ones who have this venue?
Yeah.
And so it really is. It was about growth and like, how do we do this on our own terms?
Yeah, I think about this tour a lot. Like I think about my current favorite baseball team who is going through a rebuild,
It's got to be
and
sports.
always got to be sports.
Know it.
And
Know it.
has and but like, you know, I was watching. We were playing the Dodgers this last weekend, and we lost all 4 games. And I was listening to our announcers be like, look, wins and losses mean nothing this year. It means absolutely nothing. The whole point of this season is to see who can play, who can actually like stick around with the team. And I kind of think about that with Fish at this point. It really doesn't matter that the fans don't like some of these shows. It doesn't really matter that like they don't play the greatest shows. What matters is what you guys are all alluding to, that like when they come back to these venues a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, they feel comfortable there. They know that they can do it. They get whatever backstage advice they get from Santana. They get to see like, what is the dynamic of Blues Traveler? What is the dynamic of Spin Doctors? What's the dynamic of Widespread Panic? What are we doing that's making us work? Not necessarily in comparison to these other bands, but like in conjunction as all of us are growing. I'm sure from like, you know, we've talked a lot about what was it like for the bands and these other artists, or the band and these other artists. What is it like for the management teams? Because they're backstage the whole
Mm-hmm.
time seeing how this thing runs. And like, you've got to imagine for like Paluska, Brad Sands, and Kuroda, seeing what it's like for Santana, who's playing stadiums and selling out amphitheaters without the help of Rob Thomas, that like they're learning a ton. And they're like, oh shit, we don't have that in place. We don't do that. We don't call the band at this time to get them
Yeah.
ready for this next thing. We've got to button ourselves up and make sure that this ship runs, you know, a little bit more tightly. All those things, like they're walking out saying, I would imagine we're not messing around anymore. Like this is where we're going, and we now know how to do this, which is wild to me. 2 more questions for y'all. What would you say in under 5 words? What is the sound of summer 1992? Megan, let's start with you.
Driving, playful.
I like that. Jonathan, what say you?
I think the thing that stands out to me is the ripping.
I had in doing my reviews, ripping, like popping. Mike is just on fire, just popping off all the time, and ferocious.
I like that.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that you went over 5 words. That is very, very applicable for this podcast. So thank you very much.
I learned from you, Brian.
I'm going to call this, it's like a good, strong double. You know, like you get a great hit in the outfield that you like race around first to second. Maybe you don't score, but like the double's the point.
I just, unrelated to limited lists, I
Go
like
on.
to shout out the soundboards and the way Page sounds on some of these tapes.
Yeah.
Great call.
Fucking great. Like his organ sounds so good on some of these specific shows that we listen to. In fact, he just absolutely sounds amazing. So I think 7-Eleven is probably one of them. Just listen to that. The way you can hear everything, like as he's adjusting his Leslie in ways that you don't hear in later shows.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one thing that's really interesting about both Mike and Trey is they're playing all the notes to get to the note. And that level of restraint is something they would get by 94 and 95. But I love it when you're going to play like 10,000 notes and then Trey hits the sustain and your face melts and you're just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Wait, we didn't even get to talk about that like 3-minute note he holds during the mics in the
No.
show I was talking about. That
Right.
is crazy.
Yeah.
It's just like insane. He plays one note for like 3 minutes and you can
Yeah.
hear the rest of them like, okay, we're gonna keep jamming underneath this note that you're still playing.
Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous.
It is. It's wild that, like, I'm really glad you brought up Paige because we don't talk as much about Paige in this era. And like, is anyone going to change their sound as much as Paige in the next 6 months? Like, he's 6 months away from
Yeah.
getting the baby grand piano, and
Yeah.
suddenly, like, the richness of the Fish sound is going to change. Last question for you guys. So we did this as we ended the spring series. We did this as we started this episode. The band is going to take some time off. They are going to record Rift in the interwee months, and then they're going to go back on the road, and they have a fall tour that we will be covering when we get to November. Band is not going to go back on the road again until November. They're going to play a 21 show fall tour that goes from November 19th to December 13th. And it's basically a Northeast and slightly Midwest run. But where do you guys hear the band as they've now finished this tour? We didn't all listen to every single show, but we heard a good amount. They do Horde, they do Solo, they do Santana. Alex, starting with you as our guest, where do you hear the band as they're moving on to this next phase of their career?
I mean, I think I first of all, I really loved the spring review that you guys did. It was really informative. I love touching upon like the West Coast shows and the freedom. And really, I think that's what leads into the fall tour is that this comfort that they built off the spring run, but then this knowledge that, hey, we can play slightly bigger venues. We can do it on our own terms. I think you're starting to hear some of that play into the sound where they're more comfortable going out and just like, well, let's push it. Let's push it. And how do we give ourselves space to grow? So that really was just kind of coming off that summer, moving into the fall is just like, okay, we're doing this, but we're doing it our way.
Love that. Jonathan, what do you got?
I mean, it's the same thing that they were doing in the years prior and will keep doing for a couple more years is they're just building, they're just adding the pieces. So what they got to do these amphitheater big venue tour in the summer, and just like you were saying, Brian, they were all learning, management's learning, everybody's taking what they learned there. Let's apply it to what we need to do now in the fall as we go out there and hit the theaters and play, various universities. So they start to continue to scale up a little bit, starting to play various forums and, the smaller arenas and things. And it's just continuing growth.
Yeah.
Learning, building, ever forward. Go Fish.
That's it. Meg, what do you got?
It's a really exciting time for them. I mean, thinking about what's coming ahead in the fall, they're going to like introduce the big ball jam. Not my favorite, but it definitely like gets them into that space where they're kind of like more chaotic and more improvisational.
Experimental.
You think about them starting to do that in songs like Stash and Split Open and Mount, songs that had really strong year in 1992. And then they're starting to stretch those out and think of how they can type to those instead of just like Bowie or Weekapog. And you've got like awesome narrations coming up, like really funny, cool narrations. You've got the Vibration of Life coming out. And there's just some really cool stuff that they're going to start doing in the fall that's they're inspired, clearly.
I think the Big Ball Jam is an interesting one to bring up here because it is not just an improv tool, but it's also a thing that they use to make sure they could continue to connect with the audience in the bigger rooms.
Yeah.
So as they got into these forums and small arenas and stuff, they do this to make sure they are really still connecting with the people in front of them. And I think it
still
works.
having that intimacy. Yeah.
Right.
I agree with everything you guys say. I think my two thoughts are, one, it had to be so comforting to look ahead after this summer tour that there had to be a lot of pressure. Like they're not especially these Santana gigs, they're not like doing their thing, and they're not like just themselves on the road kind of evolving as a band. But then you look ahead to November and you get the Palace Theater in Albany, you get Broome County Forum, they return there in Binghamton, they played that great show there in March. You get 2 nights at the Capitol Theater in Portchester, you get 2 nights at the Vic in Chicago, Illinois. You get these little theaters in Minneapolis, Madison, Kalamazoo. They play the State Theater, and then they end with these 2 nights in Canada. They play Toronto on the 12th, and they play the Spectrum Montreal on the 13th. And you just get like these tiny theaters in areas that they're pretty familiar with. The furthest they go west is Minneapolis, which is pretty safe traveling around that point in time. But like it had to be, they record Rift, they play this little mini 4-week tour over Thanksgiving and into like right ahead of Christmas. That had to be just so relaxing for them to go out at that tour. And I'll just tip my hand 4 months early. This fall tour is hot. It's not a hot one. It's hot. It's incredibly hot. There's some killer shows, there's some killer jams, and we hear this band start to take that further step towards 1993. So it is awesome. It is really awesome. Any last thoughts about summer 1992?
Did y'all, either of you listen to the show from Richmond, particularly the Bowie?
I did.
I
Not for a long
swear
time.
at
I don't
8
think I
minutes
did.
8 minutes in, they play My Soul. There's like 30, 40
Yes.
seconds where they're playing My Soul. And
Brian
it's like
will hear it if it's there.
It's
I heard
5
it.
years before it's a thing, but I was just like, it's My Soul. So
Yes,
That's awesome.
I totally remember that. I was like, what in the world is happening right now? Why are they playing this song inside of David Bowie?
it's not the note I want to leave you on, but I couldn't not mark on it.
It's, you know, this podcast too well. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We got baseball. The My Soul was the final thing to finish up with the bingo card. Whoever was out there that had that,
Card.
you won.
The bingo card.
Alex, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you
for
guys so much.
going to these 3 shows and reaching out to us. And it's been so awesome to talk about. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. And I want to implore you, it's on the podcast. People are going to hear this.
Oh boy.
Please reach out to us and let us know what shows you're going to. Send me an email.
Wait,
Okay.
you're
This
going to
summer.
Raleigh, right?
I'm definitely
You're
going to Raleigh.
I think you should come and do a recap with us.
I think you
that'd be
should.
awesome. That'd be great.
We're gonna
Okay,
mark
no
you down
pressure,
for
You
but
say hi to us at the show. 'cause a
yeah,
couple of
Jonathan and
us
I
are
are
gonna
both
be
going to
there.
be at the show.
Oh, I knew
too.
you and RJ were going, but I didn't know Jonathan was going.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yes,
Yep.
we have to get together then.
Yes,
we will do
find
that,
us.
and let's have you.
And we're
on
going to
here
sign you
again
up
as
for a
well.
recap.
Perfect.
Yes,
I'll be there.
I'll send you an invite here today. Alex, thank you so much for hanging. Thank you for all your thoughts. This was awesome, man. We'll do this here soon.
All right. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks,
have a good day.
Alex.
Bye.
You too, man.
Take it easy.
All
was
right.
fun.
That was
was
great.
awesome.
92, man. Such a fun tour, and Alex was so awesome there.
Yeah, his stories were great.
They really were. So we will be back, shifting gears here, because we are leaving 1992. We are moving past Santana's Supernatural. We are moving past
Supernatural too.
Supernatural 2, all the baseball seasons that happen in the middle, all the performances of My Soul. Can you just see them flying by? Soul, because we are coming to the present. Okay? We are going to be shifting our gears. I'm just looking ahead here to our calendar for the next basically month and a half.
I mean, people are going to hear a lot from us. A lot.
We're gonna have some.
You're going to hear a
things
lot
say.
from us. You're
We
going
have
to hear a
lots
lot
of
about
thoughts.
summer 2022, and we're going to kick that off on Wednesday. We're inviting our friends from Wook Plus on, and we're going to
It's
do
going to be fun.
we're going to do a second part of what we did in May. We thought we did it for the whole summer tour in May, but you know what? Content is content, and content is king, and we needed to give you more nonsensical previews, predictions, whatever this may be. We are doing our summer 2022 wish list part 2 with the Wick Plus guys. We've got some
And
great.
listen, we had some really hot takes in our first one. So I'm just saying people shouldn't miss this one because
It's a
But
fun one.
also, the ones from the first one are canonical. Anything that
Yes.
happens on Wednesday does not supersede what was previously said.
I agree 100%.
Especially
Cannot
as I
triple
won't be there
stamp
on
a double
Wednesday. So
stamp. I get it. I'm right there with you. I would say that this episode is going to be a hot one. 7 inches from the midday. So I don't know what the next lyrics are, but we will be doing that Wednesday, July 13th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and then following that, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, 11 a.m. my time, 1 p.m. your guys' time, somewhere in between or outside of that, depending on what other time zone you are in America. We will be kicking off our recaps. We're going to do Great Woods, and Banger. It's going to be really great. One last announcement to anyone listening out there. Next Monday, we have an episode scheduled. We don't have anything that we currently want to talk about. There is no Sunday Fish Show, so we will not be doing a recap. So we are turning our attention to you, the audience. Hit us up on Twitter at HFPod. Tell us what you want us to talk about. We're going to pick one topic and we're going to dive deep in that. It could be a show, could be a jam, could be
Brian's
I don't
shirt
know.
collection.
My shirt collection.
it's 5 shirts.
So yours would be a better one,
Four of
Jonathan,
each.
actually. Yeah.
4 of each shirts. It could be our thoughts on the career of Matchbox 20. We could rank all their albums. Jonathan's not doing that. It could be anything you want. So if you're listening to this, if you've made it an hour and 20 minutes into this and you're like,
God
I've
bless
always
you.
wanted HF Pod to talk about this.
And not that, sorry, Incredible Perp.
Oh,
Put it
no,
out
no,
I'll put it
no.
out
We
there.
have to
I'm
keep
busy
that
or
up.
something.
Yeah, we have to keep
I don't
that.
know.
Like,
We got to
I
keep
have a
that as the
meeting.
episode that may happen in the
that's
future.
like that's like a bargaining chip. That's
Can't
like
do that
something you like.
mid-tour. I mean, what do you want to? You want me to
You could.
quit the podcast mid-tour?
No,
You could
we
basically
need
be
you.
like, hey, the first 3 shows were so let's just imagine the first 3 shows of the tour are
No,
not very
let's
good.
not imagine.
We
it.
could
Don't
be
say
like,
it.
hey,
Don't
but
say
it
it.
could be
Oh.
worse. It could be worse. Here's
How
what
dare you.
happens.
God.
That's an interesting comment there. Anyway, if you have ideas, if you have thoughts, I'm on board with Vegas 04. So Incredible Perp, if you want to come on and you and I can just hang out and talk Vegas 04, let's do it. But tell us what you want to hear. A lot of good stuff to come. We will tell you one last time here about Sunset Lake CBD, our good friends at Sunset Lake, who is a majority employee-owned hemp farm located just outside of Burlington, Vermont. Actually, Jonathan, do you want to tell us about Sunset Lake, or should I tell us?
I mean, I
about Sunset?
can. You're
Do
doing
it.
so well, though. As everybody should know by now, because Brian just said, Sunset Lake CBD is a majority-owned, employee-owned hemp farm located just outside Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake was a dairy farm producing milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and in 2019, they diversified, started growing hemp for CBD. Sunset Lake CBD embraces Vermont's tradition for land stewardship by using sustainable and regenerative farming techniques to build and protect healthy soils. They are 100% pesticide free, use minimal tillage, and implement cover crops and crop rotations. They also serve as a research farm for University of Vermont agronomists to study hemp and inform best industry practices. I have right here in my hand my hemp salve with arnica that eases some of my discomfort from inflammation in my hands, and it's great. So you should check them out today at www.sunsetlakecbd.com. Use coupon code HFPod for 20% off all products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown.
And in addition to that, we encourage everyone once again to visit passionhousecoffee.com. Get the Ocean of Osiris. Use the code OSIRIS for free shipping on every order. And remember, if Fish plays an ocean song, tag hashtag Ocean of Osiris. We'll select 2 winners each night, and we will send you some Ocean of Osiris. In addition to that, we are 1 week away from from Osiris taking over the Ardmore Music Hall. Sponsored by Tonewood Brewing. Visit osirispod.com/OsirisLive to buy tickets. You're going to get some Tommy Hamilton, some Chris Forsyth, some Daniel Donato, some Andy Cush, some Ryan Jewell, and some Ron Stabinski. Jams, plus Megan. Also jams. Plus RJ interviewing musical guests. Plus some more jams. And then you get Fish the next 2 nights at the Man.
Maybe for next week's episode, we could sit down and I could go through all of the albums that I own that have Ryan Jewell, the drummer, who will be at that show. I'm not sure we have enough time to do that in a single episode.
I've got
a lot.
Oh.
I know for a fact I have less than you by probably like tenfold, and I have so many that it's going to take a long time to go through the show. Maybe we'll swap out. Well, what do we have, and we can talk about our favorite Ryan Jewell records next week, because that dude.
Ooh, that's cool.
He's done some things. I had. You know, I'm gonna
he's
get real with you guys. I don't have a lot of drummers on my podcast. It's not a shot at drummers. But I had him on the show just so we could talk about so many different bands in one visit. It was, I mean, he's an amazing drummer, to be clear. So it was also to talk about that. And Dead, he's a really sweet guy too. But we were able to talk about so many different bands. And since then, he's done even more stuff. I mean, it's outstanding. It's just wonderful.
That's
And
incredible.
all of those guests for that show, I mean, they've done so much. I also got a big old stack of Chris Forsyth records around here somewhere. So
I don't think there's anyone on this planet that I enjoy watching play music more than Ryan Jewell.
he's always having a good time at it.
He's just his whole body is into it, and he's got that big smile on his face. It's absolutely incredible. So check all that out. Let us know what you want us to talk about next Monday. We are ready and waiting for your Vegas 04 asks. Until then, before Jonathan and Megan can tell me no one more time, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for hanging. We will see you guys again on Wednesday to talk summer tour predictions with Wook Plus. Till then.
Bye, everyone.
See y'all.